Welcome back. It's good to be back with you today and to talk about what's on my mind, and hopefully we can learn something together. I always enjoy teaching because when I teach, I learn. I have to dig it out so I can impress you. Anyhow, today I wanted to talk to you about Jonah. You know, Jonah with the big fish. This is such an interesting story, and if you grew up in church, you probably have heard the story of Jonah and the fish since you were a child. If you did not grow up in church, you probably only in the last few years have become across the story, and you think, how can that be? Well, this is a matter of, do you believe in miracles? A lot of walking with the Lord is, do you believe in miracles? I do. So I don't have a hard time with some of this stuff. If you don't believe in miracles, hang on. So over the last few years, there's been a lot of verbiage and discussion about whether or not Jonah and the whale story is true, whether or not it was really a whale or if it's just a big fish. You know, I think people think Jaws, that kind of thing. And it boils down to believing in miracles. Jonah lived in about the 8th century BCE, before the Common Era. And he was from the village of Gath-Hepher, which was a village north of Nazareth, if you've been to Israel. He was a prophet. He was the son of Amittai, whom we don't really know anything about. And he lived during the time of the second Jeroboam and was very active as a prophet. He was near the Jordan River, east of Jerusalem, when he received the call from God to go to Nineveh, which is where we come into this story. Now, a little bit of geographical layout here. You have the Jordan River comes down. If you've not been to Israel, the Jordan River comes down and it divides Israel on the west from Jordan on the east. And it's in a valley. And then you go up to Jerusalem. And you can go across the mountains up to Jerusalem. Jerusalem's on a mountaintop. And then you go down the mountains, through the valley, and through the plains to the Mediterranean. And Joppa is on the Mediterranean. Tel Aviv is actually a suburb of Joppa. Joppa was before Tel Aviv. Anyhow, when Jonah got the call to go to Nineveh, he was over by the Jordan River. And it would have been so easy for him to turn right, go back up toward Nineveh. Nineveh is where Mosul, Iraq is today. Okay, so much easier just to go straight north and a little bit east and get over there. However, Jonah didn't want to go to Nineveh. There were a lot of reasons he didn't want to go to Nineveh, but one of it was because he didn't like them. Pretty simple. He didn't like the Ninevites. They were Gentiles. He didn't want them saved. And he knew that if God was sending him to Nineveh, they would definitely accept God. So he goes, the whole book of Jonah is only 4 chapters long. I mean, it's really short, really, really short. But it's a powerful story. So let's go to Jonah 1, verses 2 and 3. God says, "Arise, go to Nineveh, the great city, and cry out against it, for their wickedness has come up before me." But Jonah rose up to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. So he went down to Joppa from a ship which was going to Tarshish, paid the fare, went down into it to go with them to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He was hiding on the boat. Not a good place to hide. So, as I said a while ago, he was over here at the Jordan River when he got the call, went up over the mountains, down through the plains to Joppa to get on the boat to go way over here to Tarshish. Well, Nineveh is referenced as the great city because of its size and its affluence. In fact, it was the largest city in the world, that is the world as it was known then, for 50 years. And it was the ancient capital of Assyria. Why, when Jonah was such a good prophet, would he disobey God and not want to go to Nineveh? It's because he just flat didn't want them to be saved. According to the sages, the Jewish sages, Jonah was in such a hurry to go to Tarshish that he paid the entire passage fee. That means he bought all the tickets. He paid for it. He just wanted to get out of dock. He wanted to go, go, go. You can't outrun God. If God's called you to do something, you might as well just buckle up and do it. Anyhow, he tries to go. It didn't do him much good. He goes down in the boat, he goes to sleep, they go out to sea, and they get into a storm. Now, do you believe God controls the weather? Okay, so they go to sea, they get into a storm. The sailors who are pagans were frightened, and they prayed to their gods to stop the storm, which came up suddenly and violently. I'm from Oklahoma. I know about storms that come up suddenly and violently. Fortunately, we're not on the water when that happens. Then in Jonah 1:5, it says, Then the sailors became afraid, and every man cried to his God, and they threw the cargo which was in the ship into the sea to lighten it for them. But Jonah had gone below into the hold of the ship, down and fallen asleep. Jonah was less afraid of the storm than he was of going to Nineveh. He was asleep in the cargo bay. According to the sages, one of the reasons he didn't want to go to Nineveh was because Israel, at that time, was also worshiping idols. And he knew if Nineveh got their act together before God, it would make Israel look bad. Okay. The captain of the ship woke him and told him he had to do something. He had to pray. He had to do something. Pray to your own God. Maybe your God will do something. Our gods won't. And now these were men of the sea. They knew about storms and they knew what to do, but they were terrified. However, they were pretty sure it was a God thing because the storm came up so fast. They decided to cast lots to see if they could determine if one of them was the cause for the devastating storm. And they continued casting the lots until it pointed to Jonah. And then they asked what he had done to cause the storm and to cause his God to be so angry. Now, I don't know about you, but I've been caught in a storm at sea. It's very scary. Very. I am not a good swimmer. My husband was an excellent swimmer, and he loved to scuba and snorkel. And so we went on this scuba snorkeling excursion, and we're novices. I mean, we're dryland people, and we're novices at this weather thing at sea. Here in Oklahoma, I'm pretty good at it. So we get on this boat and we see the storm clouds off in the distance, but it's over the ocean, and we don't know how to judge anything in the ocean. And so the boat is full of people for this excursion, and we go out to the diving spot, and the storm gets closer, and we can see it, and the water's getting choppier. And the captain of the boat, didn't seem to be too perplexed by any of it. So, you take your cues from the leader. And so the scuba divers were going to go down over here, and the snorkelers were going to go over here. And there was a reef, and there were some tiny islands. Well, because David had recently been sick, he had recently had the flu and wasn't up full steam. So he said, let's just go snorkeling, which is fine with me because I don't do scuba. And so we get out in the water, and we're going along, and I have this little kickboard as my security blanket, that and David, and I'm okay. And so we're out there in this really choppy water, and all kinds of things are going wrong, really wrong. And we're trying to go, and we keep pushed back by the waves. And finally we get to this little, actually it was a reef. And the waves are coming so hard. We tried to get up, and they would knock us over. And so I was getting water in my mask, and what happened was my hair had gotten caught in the mask and broke the seal and all this stupid stuff that was going on. We shouldn't have been out there. Anyhow, we had on orange gloves that we wear. And so we're just getting knocked over, and David is not strong enough to help me. So I did like this with my orange gloves, waves, help, and the waves knocked us over. Well, I saw, just as I got knocked over, that I saw somebody run on the boat. And so I thought, they're coming after us. And David said, well, they're not going to come get us. It's too choppy out here. We have to get ourselves in. And I said, we can't do that. We don't have the strength. Grabbed my kickboard, which was floating off, grabbed it, trying to stay side by side with him. because he had been sick, he didn't have the strength to keep going. And I thought, we're in trouble. We're really in trouble out here. And no one else could help us. And so here comes the guy from the boat. He has this special equipment. He comes over and he gets to us, and I said, get him first because he's weak. And so they get David and they get me and they get us back on the boat. And people said, what happened out there? And we told them. And so they're trying to get, the captain had gone down scuba diving with people below us. And so the way they get their attention, because they don't have any clue what's going on up on surface. And so they kept starting the boat, shutting off, signaling the captain. So when the captain came up, he was a little alarmed at how bad the storm had gotten. It couldn't have been over 30 minutes, the whole thing. And so David overheard him say, I hope we can make it back in. So we're chugging along in this boat trying to get our way back to where we left. And David said to me, he said, okay, if the boat capsizes, swim to the island there. And I'm going, really? Wow. I mean, I was scared. I was scared because I didn't have the confidence in myself as a really good swimmer. We think, well, as Christians, we're not afraid to die. Well, I wasn't afraid to die. I was just afraid to drown. I don't want to drown. Dying, yeah, that's okay. So here we have the people on the boat. I digress there. The people on the boat, the seamen, they're very adept at handling storms, and yet this is a storm that they cannot handle because they know it came from God. And so what do? In Jonah 1, verses 11 and 12, so they said to him, what should we do to you that the sea may become calm? For the sea was becoming increasingly stormy. He said to them, pick me up and throw me into the sea. Then the sea will become calm for you. For I know that on account of me, this great storm has come upon you. And when he said, pick me up and throw me into the sea, that's kind of like suicide by cop, isn't it? I mean, if you don't have the courage to do it yourself, act up, wave a gun, and the cops will shoot you. It's kind of what's happening a lot. And so why didn't he just jump in on his own? If he really thinks he's responsible for the storm, and once he jumps into the sea, once he's in the sea, the storm will calm, why didn't he just do the hero thing and jump in? Well, he needed to be thrown in for whatever reason. They didn't want to throw him in the sea. So according to what I was reading in the Sages, they take him by his arms and they dunk him in the sea down to his knees. Storm calms. They pull him back into the boat, storm rages again. They dunk him in up to his breast point, storm calms. They pull him back in, storm rages again. And finally said, throw him in. And so they throw him in, and then this big boat, big fish comes and swallows him. Thankfully, it wasn't a shark, but it was probably a whale. So it swallows him, and he's now inside the fish. Whoa. That's a stinky place to be. So they had tried really hard to save Jonah. They couldn't do it. So finally, and the actor's preservation, they threw him in. Jonah 2, verses 1 and 2 says, Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the stomach of the fish, and he said, I called out of my distress to the Lord, and he answered me. I cried for help from the depth of Sheol. He heard my voice. Now, Jonah prays. He's a little slow on the upstart there, but I guess nothing can make you pray more than being stuck in the belly of a whale. I mean, you'd either want to die or get out of there. I think it's a little scary. And when we listen to his prayer, we see that he begins to get it. He begins to understand that he's expected to be alive. He's expected to do what he's going to do. And he's in the worst kind of predicament than when he was on the ship. And this predicament he's in stinks. It really stinks, smell-wise. And the prayer continues in verses 5 through 6. Water encompassed me to the point of death. The great deep engulfed me. Weeds were wrapped around my head. I descended to the roots of the mountains. The earth with its bars was around me forever. But you have brought my life up from the pit, O Lord my God. I can only imagine what this is like. God took him to the bottom of the earth and let him see the foundations of the mountains. That's pretty interesting. Well, you can say, well, how did he see them? I mean, he's in the belly of the fish. Does he have portholes that he's looking out? How does he see these? I don't know how he saw them. We're talking about miracles here. David and I took a mini sub excursion one time. We were in Barbados. And David was contemplating doing a night scuba dive. And so we decided we would take this little sub down at night. It was, like it hold 10 people. And so we bought the tickets and we get on the sub and we go down and down and down at night into the depths of the ocean. And it was comfortable, it was air conditioned, and it was peaceful and a nice, gentle, sloping descent. Well, when we get down there, they turn off all the lights on the sub. That's a little scary. But we had scuba divers that accompanied the sub. And so they were swimming around outside, and over the PA system, the captain would tell us what we're looking at, and they would swim over and they would highlight with their lights the thing that the captain's telling us about, the reef or the sea life or whatever, all that stuff. I don't like it. So anyhow, we discovered nightlife on the ocean, and David decided he wasn't going to do the night dive, which I was really glad. But anyhow, here we were in this very comfortable environment. No seaweed around our heads, nothing like that. And yet here we were a little bit intimidated by it, and yet we were totally safe. Now, imagine being inside that wet, stinky, smelly